right. Good afternoon, everybody. I hope everybody's well fed and is having a good time at the conference. My name is Sean Bala. I am an assistant professor in the Jindal School of Liberal Arts and Humanities, and I am the current director of admissions and outreach for Jindal Global University. I'm from the United States. My research focuses on religious studies primarily, and I teach in our interdisciplinary seminars in our program. And today's panel is going to be talking about the idea of choosing a college major. Now, the logic for doing this panel, or why I wanted to do this panel, is sometimes when I'm talking to people, there's a joke I frequently will say, which is, if you are in India and you're a student, if you're really smart, then what do? Technology, engineering. If you're smart and and can stand the sight of blood, you do medicine. If you like to argue, yeah. If you want to make money, and if you can't do anything else, well. So I tell this a lot, but it actually is. It actually speaks to a much. It's funny and we can laugh at it, but this is actually a much this hierarchy of degree tracks. This sort of hierarchy of values has a much deeper implication for Indian society as a whole. And I know this is a problem across Asia as well, but this problem, you can really see it when you're doing admissions, because you can see that there are students who just do not fall into these categories, into these four classical categories. There are students that have different needs, who have a different set of goals in mind, who may have an idea of what they want to do, may have no idea what they want to do, may have an idea they want to do a combination of things and just don't know the direction or way to go about it. The fact is that India is a country with 600 million young people. This is a fact that is bandied about constantly. But the fact is you have 600 million young people with goals, ideas, and aspirations that need to be addressed. And students can go abroad, of course, but we also have many options in India here, trying to give them a range of options. And one of those options is the idea of liberal arts. So we'll be speaking very much about liberal arts today, though the ideas that we'll be talking about actually can speak to degree tracks or majors across different types of education. The other motivation for doing this was, as a member of the administration for the Jindal School of Liberal Arts and Humanities, I saw students, usually around this time of the year, students starting to decide what degree track what major and what degree track they wanted to take. And I could see I talked with many of them. And the range of reasons and ideas that went into why they were thinking of their majors were very fascinating to me, ranging from I did really well in this course, so this is the subject I should take, to I have this 10-year plan of what I want to do with my life, and this is going to speak to that, and anywhere in between. So the idea of choice, I think that choice undergirds a lot about global society. That you have a choice in the kind of things you want to do, the kind of things you want to buy, the kind of places you want to go. And so this idea that students actually have a choice is something that I think is worth talking about. The final thing is that truly at the heart of this question is the idea of what do students really want to do? And that may seem like a simple thing to say, but the truth is that if students truly understand themselves and understand what goes into the decision to think about the different paths they go on, then they will be happier. And they will actually prosper on those paths they go on. They can do a conventional path or more conventional path and be miserable. Or they can actually think about what they want to do and be happier. So those are some of the motivations of why we wanted to do this panel. And the way this is going to work is that I'm giving a brief introduction. Then Dean Kathleen Modrowski, the Dean of the Jindal School of Liberal Arts and Humanities, will give some brief remarks about this idea of choosing a college major. But then, because we believe that students have a voice, this panel will then be turned over to students, where we will be asking questions about liberal arts programs, choosing a major, and then the idea of societal values. We'll be looking at those three large areas. So we'll be giving questions to the students to answer. We might jump in occasionally, and then we'll open the floor to questions from the audience. Before we continue, are there any initial questions? Okay, so in that case, I'm going to turn it over to Dean Kathleen Modrowski.
Hello. I am Kathleen Modrowski, and can you hear me clearly? And I'm the Dean of the School of Liberal Arts and Humanities at Jindal Global University. My background has been in international education, experiential education, human rights, and by training and my degrees are in anthropology. So I've had a lot of work in France, where I did my graduate school. I also worked extensively in Africa, in Senegal, Mali, South Africa, sometimes in Italy, and in the United States. So it's a really broad, I must say, a typically liberal arts education, and also one that was involved in international work a lot. I'm going to talk to you about some of the ideas of what it means to, number one, go to university. What does that mean? You know, why is this such an important event to go to the university? And secondly, what are some of the decisions, the pitfalls that students have to face when they are making their decisions? I'd like to refer to this first step of deciding to go to school, this breaking away, as one of the major rites of passage. So our lives from birth on are marked by different steps that are noted to be significant steps in our societies that indicate that we've gone from one stage to another. Some of them are, I wish I had a picture, but you all know, you can put it in your mind. What happens, when a child is born? There are certain rites and rituals that are carried out within the family. And by a priest or by other people attending that child to really note, to mark that the child has come into the world. One of the final ones, of course, are the death rites. And every society has death rituals one way or another, whether they're elaborate or whether they're minimal. They still are death rituals showing this passage that you've gone through. In the middle, there's often marriage. But more recently, well, marriage, of course, is important. One of the important rites of passage is going to university. Now, this is very significant to many people because it may be taken by students as a continuation of going to school, learning, etc. But actually, it's very important. And using Van Gennep, who was a French sociologist and anthropologist and philosopher, he wrote the whole theory on the rites of passage in, I think it was 1916, and it's pretty much recognized still as something that's important. But he divides this into three major stages, which is separation, which is separation from the familiar. The next step is liminality. Liminality meaning, when you go through a doorway. Oops. I don't know if this is going to work or not for my... A liminality, when we walk through a doorway, there's usually something marking that door. And when we go through it, we leave something behind. But we don't really know what... I think I can just let it go. Because I'm going to be brief. By the time we set this up, that's okay. Okay, I'll let it go. So this middle part is, as far as many of us are concerned, do we have sound? The middle part is probably the most interesting because it's transcending, it's going into the unknown, and on your way to, if successful, the third part, which is incorporation. I think this is very apt for our students, for young people today, because many of them, and many of their parents, and many of the teachers don't really know what that effect of going to the university is going to bring them. I wanted to point out that there are opportunities, but there are also dangers facing them. Some of the dangers of going to university, they're emotional dangers more than physical dangers. But for my many years teaching students, I feel that this is really quite important across countries and across cultures. And one is leaving the family. Leaving the family, it's often for students who are undergraduates a first instance of having that breakaway moment from the family. This has a huge impact on them and also what they're studying, how they make their decisions. Secondly is facing independence, making decisions on their own, trying to weigh what are the right and the wrong ways to act, and trying to, especially now, deal with so many of the new circumstances. A lot of different freedoms come into their lives. Some of them are delivered through social media, some of them through speaking with friends, some are coming from overseas, but there is this idea of what independence should be, and this tension that exists between what is known, what's home, what's the canon of correct behavior, and what they're really facing. Third is encountering diversity. Every level of diversity they're seeing. Diversity with people from different groups, different social classes, different ideas, and that can be very stimulating. And then finally, what I would list as one of the important phases is making choices. For the first time in many young people's lives, they have to make choices on their own. Things as simple as, do I get up and go to class? What am I going to take? What subjects am I going to take? And that's what the subject of our talk is going to be, making your choices for choosing a major. So all of these, if you can imagine, while that person is going from the security of a life that has been pretty well marked out for them, going from that security to being thrust into this wonderful, vibrant pool of choices, dangers, different arbitrary instances that are emotionally charged, and they're going to come out of it. We all see most of them come out as whole human beings with restored knowledge and an effervescence for life. So those are the steps. That's why I'm talking about, oh, you can't see that. I really like this picture, taking the plunge into, where in certain places you jump from a tree and you have ropes attached to you and you hope that the ropes resist the fall. And that's what this kind of faith of going to university is. So university is this rite of passage. And what are some of the opportunities they get? And this is what becomes very important, not just the name of the school, but it also becomes very important when they're considering some of these other options. And one is, will the institution allow me independence of thought? It's not just the physical, spatial independence. Will it get independence of thought? Will that be offered to me? Broadening your knowledge, skills, and experiences. Will all of these elements be part of my learning? Will all of these be there? Or, we can look at many traditional modes of learning. You may gain knowledge. You may have a lot of rote learning, which is fine in certain instances. But are you going to be able to take this from knowledge to skills, understand what the skills are, and then the different experiences? I won't go into this, but it's something to think about, the difference between gaining knowledge and real learning. Learning has a holistic aspect to it. Knowledge is often categorical and restricted to a certain subject matter. Both are important, but learning can transcend many different areas of a person's life. The questions that I have asked students, and I just want to share with you some of them, and you tell me about the time. Am I almost up?
You're fine.
I'm okay. All right. Why are you going to college? Why are you going to college? That's a big one. People usually don't answer that question. Maybe you do in admissions offices. But why are you going to college? So one of the freshman students said, I just knew I would go to college. I never really thought of why. And I think that's kind of a pretty standard response of I knew I'd go to college. I asked a transfer student, and the transfer student said, and this was a lengthy one, so you're going to have to bear with me. I studied science and went to tuitions and was preparing and passed the all-Indian exam for medical test, the all-Indian practical medical test. And then I had to say no. In the first year, the students said, no, I don't know anything. I want to learn about the world. I know a lot about the body, the brain, even laws of physics and chemistry, but I don't know anything about the world we live in. Now that I am in liberal arts, I feel that I don't know everything, but I know what I don't know. Even if I don't care much for something I'm doing in my classes, I feel that I am learning something I would not have known had I gone into medicine, which was my parents' desire. So that's pretty interesting. It certainly isn't the response for everyone, but I felt it was a really powerful statement about that student who embraced their own sense of responsibility toward themselves. And then here's a quote from a senior student. Everyone spends a lifetime embedded in a world they invariably shape by the very fact of existence. We should have the tools we need to shape it responsibly and recognize the beauty surrounding us. So this is, again, quite mature. It shows a lot of thought, and it shows that this person is thinking beyond themselves. They're thinking of themselves as citizens of the world, thinking of people who have responsibility. And when I see that kind of response, I feel really hopeful because I feel, gee, my generation is leaving a pretty big mess for people to take care of. Are they just going to opt for a kind of personalized economic solution, or are they going to be looking at the larger picture of the well-being of the world in their position in the world? So these are some of the responses that I've gained from students, and some of them I think that as many of us are educators or involved in education, that we consider every day when we try and make the best choices for our students or help them, because I feel inadequate in making choices myself, but I feel that we can guide our students in helping them understand what their choices are, where they're going, and have a dialogue with them about the world they're going to be entering. I don't think we know. We can read the statistics. We can read the economic views of it, but, we cannot really make solid predictions because no one has. They have not really come up with a very good response on what the future will bring. I have one last thought here that I wanted to bring up to you. One is a book that was written recently called Sense and Sensitivity, and it's why humanities and liberal arts fit in so well in more theoretical subjects. So both the authors are economists, and they have written these points of why the humanities, why liberal arts are so important. Humans are not merely organs, they're immersed in a veneer of culture. So that's one point. To understand people, you must tell stories about them. Personhood and society demand histories, they demand novels. So many things, I think all of us will agree, cannot come just from the straight facts. I think we see it on the political realm, that if you're just making your decisions based on statistical material, without understanding the whole view of it, that you're not going to come up with solutions that are going to satisfy more than the theoretical part. And finally, the authors, Morgan and Mortensen, have stated all major issues involve ethical considerations. We often forget ethical considerations when it comes to more pragmatic concerns, but I would say that these ethical considerations are what should be first and foremost in the minds of decision makers, and young people will become decision makers no matter what they do, one way or another. Even by abstaining to act, they're taking part in making very vital decisions. I think you are going to have a lot more questions and things to say about choosing a major, what kind of choices should be made, and so I'm going to leave it up to you and to the students. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Kathleen. So come join the panel. So before we begin, I'm just going to pass the mic down to the students and they can introduce themselves. So please go ahead.
Hello, I'm Nabiat from Ashoka University. I am a third year political science major student.
I am Srivatsan. I am a graduate from the Jindal School of Liberal Arts and Humanities, and I am currently a research fellow.
I'm Ashish. I'm a recent graduate of Ashoka University, and right now I'm pursuing the optional 4th year at Ashoka.
Okay, so before we begin, I'd like to ask if I could have the microphone. Thank you, guys. So Kathleen, if you could briefly describe what exactly is a liberal arts school?
Briefly?
Briefly.
Okay. Briefly, a liberal arts school is an institution in which the humanities, which are the visual arts, performing arts, literature, languages, are taught, along with social sciences, which include subjects such as psychology, economics, political science, anthropology, sociology, and these are added to them. And I will add that increasingly, one of the main tools that's used to bring all of these together is technology, IT, computer research, digital humanities. So these are, the way that you look at liberal arts. A liberal arts school, and I'll put one more sentence in, a liberal arts school, what it should do is achieve what I was talking about in my maybe obscure references, that it really should prepare students to see the larger, broader view. It should not be niche learning so that a student leaves a liberal arts program saying, I read history, I know history. or I know sociology, but they aren't able to make connections with the other areas. So a real liberal arts institution will allow them to have a holistic education, which allows them to voice their choices as well as study a variety of materials.
Thank you. Now, for the students, liberal arts is a very new concept in India, about maybe 6 years, 7 years old. And I'm just curious, why did you guys select a liberal arts school?
For me personally, liberal arts was a means of exploration, a lot of discoveries, and a lot of way into looking into life choices. So, as the name suggests, it's a liberal place to students to discover themselves, not just academically, but also personally and psychological wise, what they want to pursue in their lives. So it was a place of exploration, and that was why I chose to come into liberal arts.
In my higher education, in my 11th and 12th grade, I did a CBSE education in science, in pure sciences, with biology, physics, chemistry, and math. And then I went into the liberal arts. The reason why and that was a very conscious choice, is one, as someone who deeply loves the sciences, where does the same way you have a political spectrum between left and right, you have an IIT Kanpur like BTech graduate on the left and you have a BA in liberal arts on the right, or the other way around. It seems like there is always a differentiated spectrum between the specificity in case of science and technology, or the ambiguity in the case of social sciences. And I felt like the one thing that was required was a confluence of the two. So one thing I wanted was to be able to choose what I wanted to study. And secondly, what I wanted to do was to study more than one thing at once. So I chose to study the liberal arts, and I'm a major in international relations. And so my specialization comes both in gender theory as well as conflict studies. And the reason why I chose the liberal arts at the end of the day is, one, I wanted a manner of fusing specificity with the same kind of questions that one is expected to answer in a world like this. I'll just say one more sentence is, for me, I'm used to be expected to know facts. I'm the one who's very trained and brought up in competitive examinations. I've been expected to know things off the tip of my fingers. But the one thing is, if you ask me any question ever known to man, I can answer to you right now with my phone, which is in my pocket. It won't take me more than 5 seconds. However, if you ask me how can we reconcile liberty and equality in a democracy, that is something that I would want to know how to answer, which is primarily why I selected the liberal arts after a school education like that.
For me, I chose liberal arts program primarily because I was confused. Confused, not like I didn't know what I wanted to do in college. Till high school, okay, fine. So a bit of background to of my family. So I'm the first graduate of my family. So till my high school, my father was there to sow the path. Whereas after that, so I had to seek help from others, my elders, as in my seniors, my teachers, and all. But so I was born when the Maoist insurgency had just started in the country. So instead of growing, so our economic in Nepal, so in Nepal's economy was going down. So, and it took almost a decade to end that insurgency. And then it had both economic and political consequences. So I got interested in both economics and political science. Whereas so had I wanted to do economics, I would have probably chosen, let's say, Delhi University for economics. BCom major would have, where I would have just gotten knowledge on economics. Similarly, for political science, I would have gone to another reputed university where I would have done just political science courses. Whereas a liberal arts program was offering me an opportunity to explore both economics and political science together with other disciplines. So right now, so after choosing, so and then we had to decide our major only by the end of third semester, right? So that gave me the opportunity to explore subjects from both economics, political science, and now I'm a economics major, and right now I'm pursuing a minor in international relations. Yeah, that's why I chose, like, that's the beauty of liberal arts program, I would say.
Why do you choose to go for this optional 4th year?
Okay, so one, it's because so I had done a few courses in international relations in my 3 years stay at Ashoka. So, and the optional 4th year gave me an opportunity to explore more in this field in international relations. That's one reason. Another reason, it's 3 years degree. It's not valid all over Nepal. So I had to come back for the 4th year.
Okay, so thank you guys. And that's actually a great segue into the question I wanted to ask next, which is, and you have sort of gotten to it, but did you come into the program, did either any of you guys come into the program with a very set idea of what you wanted to do? And more interestingly, did you change your mind? And if so, what were the reasons that you changed your mind?
Yeah, so I came here because I was confused. So I wasn't here with a set goals that I would pursue a major in economics. That's one. But yeah, I would say that's it. Like,
So are you clear now?
yeah, so I'm a economics graduate. I'm still like, I'm clear that I graduated in economics, but maybe like in for my master's, I'm not yet sure whether I want to continue with economics or international relations. Yeah, or I want to pursue a master's in public policy. So why I chose this? So like the quality of interactions that we have in liberal arts program itself, like, so it helps you to like explore your area of interest. So that's why, and in my first 3 semesters, I did studied courses from economics, political science, and like from across the disciplines. Those are the foundation or the core courses that we had to do. And then finally, I was like less confused or somewhat like convinced that, yeah, I want to pursue a major in economics.
I had no idea what I would major in when I stepped foot, because it's very interesting with these college degrees that, at least in India, that you're suddenly supposed to make a decision about a subject that you know absolutely nothing of before starting in. Suddenly I'm supposed to decide that I want to be a psychology major as soon as I step in, and I know people who don't know the difference between psychology and psychiatry. And I know that people who are even graduated many places, and that's what we usually stuck with, right? You're stuck with the course you pick in any other course. So the way liberal arts degree works is, my friend has also said, is you pick and declare your major after at your end of your 3rd semester, where during the first 3 semesters, you take a bouquet of other courses from sociology to environmental sciences to economics, anthropology, international relations, statistics, GIS mapping, and so many more. And you finally, after knowing what all of it is, you end up deciding. So what made me change my mind on that regard is, one, I did understand what these courses actually were, what these fields actually were, what it entailed individually. And what made me go into IR and conflict studies is, I also wanted a field which wasn't purely academic, but also involved a certain level of on-ground experiences, to actually look at lived experiences in conflicts to see what affects people how. And also combined my interests in political science, in economics, in political economy, in even statistics for a large part. And that's one of the major reasons.
For me, I had the idea that I would want to do political science in my undergrad, But the idea that I had during then is completely different from what I am actually doing right now, because I was thinking that I'm interested in political science. Okay, all the subjects that I would study would be political science subjects. But after joining a liberal arts school, we have in fact different foundation courses that we study. We explore the other subjects as well, and apart from that, we have this idea of doing another minor. So actually, I changed my mind for my minor rather than my major, and when I was coming, I was thinking of minoring in international relations, but right now I got the chance to explore into visual arts also, and I'm doing both the minors simultaneously. So those are one of the advantages that we get from the liberal arts. So my idea was a bit different from what it was exactly happening from right now.
Yeah, so really interesting, guys. I'm really struck. You have you two people who were one fairly confused, one willing to sort of dive into everything, and then one person you had a clear idea, but then when you finally experienced it, it was very different. Now in a liberal arts education, what's interesting is because there is a core foundation, then there's specialized study. We believe that actually in this sort of study that your core actually is an integral part of your studies. And so my question to you is, how do you feel like that your core studies have actually impacted your studies of your major?
So in Ashoka, we are expected to take 9 foundation courses and 3 critical thinking seminars, apart from the 12 major courses that we're expected to complete to get our undergrad degree. So through those 9 foundation courses, I would say I have explored a lot other subjects than just political science. I thought like when I left high school, I was like, okay, now I'm done with maths, I'm going into politics. But then I encountered maths in my college life, and actually my foundation course in math was it kind of a basic course which showed me the beauty in maths, like the beauty that I have never experienced it when I was in school. I have taken a course called Principle of Science. I'm from a social science background, so I left sciences in grade 10. It took me back all the way to my high school life when I was doing biology and physics, and through that I have explored the philosophy of science, which I never expected to do, like along with politics. So it allows a person to have to broaden their perspectives, to have a broader look into the world, and to build up themselves, I would say.
So with regards to my core courses, the ones I enjoyed most was one core course on literature where we studied a lot of Orwell, George Orwell. There was another one called An Introduction to Tibetan Buddhism, where we went to Sarnath, lived there over a weekend at a monastery and interacted with the monks there, who were also doing a translation process of preserving the Tibetan text. And apart from this, I was also taking a political science course and another course on decolonization. So the reason why I mentioned these courses is, one, my final thesis dissertation was on the Bodoland conflict and how text and lived experiences are so utterly different from each other and what the difference between the two is. So in it, decolonization, of course, mattered. I had to go from everything from post-colonial theory to how history, at the end of the day, influences the present in a deterministic fashion. I had to go into literature and Orwell and a look into dystopian authoritarian environments to see how that feeds in a case in a conflict zone. I was looking into the Tibetan Buddhist texts themselves to draw parallels between the Tibetan conflicts and the ethnic conflicts in that region with the Bodoland conflict itself. And in a religion studies course, I read into the Tibetan Book of the Dead. And for Tibetan politics, it matters so much more. There's not merely the politics and the bureaucracy, but the religion itself is an intrinsic part of how policy is shaped. And if I hadn't done that course where I'd actually read the Tibetan Book of the Dead, I would not actually have known those things. So finally, what resulted in a holistic thesis where I was, and my major is international relations. So these 4 core courses, I believe that there is no learning that's wrong for you. There is nothing that you learn on this planet that isn't useful for something that you focus on at the end of the day. And that's why I believe that most of my core courses were actually crucial, not just additive to my major.
Mine was pretty similar to what they experienced. So in at Ashoka, we are encouraged to do all the foundation courses, the courses in our first 3 semesters, so that we explore all 9 different disciplines that the liberal arts it's not 9 different, but like what Ashoka's courses have to offer, majors have to offer to us. So there, in one of the economics classes, so what one of my professors told, so he was teaching a theory, and he said, what Mr. X, that's the author, has mentioned in his book is this, whereas I think this should be the correct answer to that. Whereas my students, like you are free to choose you are free to come up with your own answer to this. Like you can choose what the author has written in the book. You can choose to follow what I have done, or you can choose if you can come up with a new idea. I would really appreciate that. That was one reason that I chose my major to that. And next is actually, so when I came here with a political science idea, but then that very course during during my interaction with one of the former foreign secretaries of India, like that ignited the international relations craze in me. So I guess actually that has encouraged me to be pursue a foreign service career in Nepal. So I guess that's the beauty that the liberal arts program has to offer, and when I go back home, so they often say, what's liberal arts? Is it similar to what humanities and arts is? And for me, it's really hard to make them understand that, what are the foundation courses? Why do you need to do that foundation courses, the core courses? Like someone from Delhi University, so they would have done all the courses in economics, whereas you would have just done 12 to 15 courses in economics. So they might be better, they might have good knowledge of economics than you. Whereas if you see, I have I've done great books, Indian civilizations, the social and political formation. So that's I would say that you would be maybe in economics itself, you would be better than me. But if you talk about a global citizen that the liberal arts program makes you, I would say I would be better than him in that area.
Great, guys. Now, I'm curious about, so we kind of have talked a little bit about the, that, there are many different reasons of why people choose their majors. And I wanted to ask you guys, why do you feel that people struggle with a choice of a major? And if you maybe you can reflect a little bit on your own experience of choosing a major, but why do you think many of your peers, maybe not at your institutions, but other places as well, what do you think are the reasons why people struggle with this choice?
Okay, so there's a good anecdote to this one. One of my friends, so in first semester, he came when he joined the university. So he said, we used to discuss what we are going to major in. So he used to tell, I want to major in economics. In second semester, he said, I want to major in PPE, that's political science, philosophy, and economics. In third semester, he told us that he wants to major in political science. But he finally graduated with a philosophy degree. So, yeah, people struggle. What I think is the main reason is, I won't say that's a struggle, but again, the beauty of liberal arts program, you explore, the more you explore, the more confused you are, and the more it's difficult to decide your major.
I'd say that the choice of a major is not merely limited to interests or what we feel we're good at, but there's also multiple other elements to it, right? None of us actually choose our courses or what we want to study just because we want to. There's always there's a societal element to it. There is a class element to it. Look at us sitting in bourgeois Taj, speaking of a class element. But at the end of the day, isn't that why also that there is a majority population in the country choosing a particular bunch of fields? And taking that into consideration, I feel that a class element comes into play because in the liberal arts, it's not merely universality, but also specificity. You also get to pick and focus on one particular thing. I feel the major difficulty that people feel is an environment where people are incentivized to take certain courses, fields, majors more than others. Even right now, when you're speaking to us, you would hear an international relations thing multiple times. You'd hear economics multiple times. You would hear political science multiple times. You would perhaps hear business multiple times. Why is it there are certain majors more picked? Simply because not because there's an environment where there is greater employability. I can give you statistics as to why it's not a matter of employability. It's more of a matter of what we are led to believe is an intense course or a serious course versus what is not. So I believe that when it comes to why people feel difficulty, if it was left to us to merely pick something that we believe we would love to, or we believe we would be good at, that would be very different from what decision we actually make with a large number of influences that come in. So I sometimes feel like if all of those external influences were sometimes gone, we may be half the people we are, because sometimes those influences end up pushing us into fields which we may not necessarily like. Hence, liberal arts education is also about sometimes doing courses you don't like. We had to do math in liberal arts. We had to do statistics, intense statistics and multivariate regressions and that. And math was one thing that I was never a big fan of. But at the end of the day, it's also about pushing yourself into do things that you don't like. So I feel like at the end of the day, a major difficulty comes from both what you'd like and want to do as well as what everybody around you likes and wants for you to do.
Yeah, additionally to the class rationale that he just mentioned, I believe that there is a societal value attached to education every time. In my personal experience, my family were not happy in my grade 11 when I chose to be a social science stream student. But even after joining social science, they were so sure that I would go into law studies. So when I said I would go to liberal arts universities, they were like, why would you want to go to there? They were concerned with my unemployment or after graduation. They were also they had this imagination of what good education is. They wanted me to be an engineer or a doctor or a lawyer. They didn't want me to be a political or like a person in that area. So I really don't know why these societal values have developed from, but they are already there and creating some kind of stigma. There is also a gender influence, I would say. Girls are expected to take certain courses, whereas boys are allowed to go into other courses. So all those were an influences in deciding my major. And had I given up to the wishes of my family, I would be in one of those Ethiopian government schools that I came from. So pursuing something that is not part of my interest. And one thing that we forget is actually what we pursue in our undergrad level might not be, of course, our career goal or what we would do in life. But still, it's something that is core, that is a foundation for our being, like for our coming into the world. And as a person, we need to pursue our passions like in a more liberal way than all those pressures, and all those things influence our choices.
So thank you for some really interesting answers, actually. I mean, actually, during our preparations, you were telling me that in Ethiopia, it's two streams. That's it. It's natural sciences and social sciences. So take your pick. Okay, so I'd like to end our discussion, then we'll open up to the floor with questions, with very simply asking you guys to comment, what advice would you give to students when they're deciding their major or their course of study? Like, what would you have wanted to hear at your age, or at their age? What would you have told yourself?
I would strongly recommend for a person to follow their passion, to see what their interest actually is. Of course, so many things come into consideration, economical or the career market, the employability, all those things. But after all, it's about you and your life, what you want to do in that life. So it would be your passion, your interest, that you would be productive in it, not what other people, not what the society will tell you or push you to pursue. So I would tell my younger self that follow your interest, and that's the best thing, I think.
So two things I would say is, one, visit the place that you're planning to study at. Have a physical view of the space. No, because it's not merely what you're studying, but where, what kind of environment it is, who's around you. And two, connecting to that is, it is not about the name of the place that you're going to as much as who is going to be teaching you. The one single consideration that you have for any choosing where you study is the faculty members downstreet. Who is going to be teaching you? Who are the faculty members? And that, I feel, is the primary consideration that I wish someone had told me. Stop looking at the nicer names, the nicer rankings, but look at the places that perhaps you have better opportunities to do things for. So at JSLH, for example, when we started off, there was utter stigma against, simply because, one, it was liberal arts, obviously. Second, because, one, it was also a relatively newer university. And at that time, it was unprecedented for anybody also to do a liberal arts degree to be able to take law courses, to be able to do business courses, to be able to do IR courses, because you also can take electives and courses from multiple schools, which is an option. And you need to, one, just take a very rational look at the opportunities you have in a physical space, look at who is going to be guiding you, and the faculty members in spaces like this become some of your closest friends there are. And I've had dinner conversations with them. I know a lot of their kids better than I know my own batchmates. And why it matters is, invariably, it is of the interpersonal communication and relationships that you form with these exceptional, talented academics and individuals. Later on, when you go for a career, and you all would know the importance of networking, otherwise you wouldn't be here. And which is why, at the end of the day, you also need to look more than the curriculum and syllabus matters. But I know brilliant curriculums which have been absolutely terribly taught. Take all of my schooling, for example. Faculty matters. Look at the faculty members, look at the space, look at whether it's conducive to your mental health, look at whether it is a healthy space for you to express your views, express disagreement, and disagree with the people who are teaching you. And yeah.
Just to add one or two sentences to that, I would just say, like, it's okay to be confused. It's not something that would like really matter, because during my high school, like, okay, I have confusion in this. Like, people would doubt at me. Does this guy really know this thing? Is he really good in this field? But like, after like a graduate of after being a graduate of a liberal arts program, I would say it's really good to be confused while deciding what you want to do in life.
Yeah, you can be confused and know you're confused. And that's, yeah. We'll open the floor up to questions. We have a few minutes for a few questions at the end. So yes, please.
Hi, I'm Kaylee from the University of Kent in the UK. Thank you so much for sharing your experiences. I just wanted to say it's really refreshing to hear that employability did not factor into anyone's decisions, or it may have a smaller amount. I was a French and drama student, and everyone was so confused why I would want to do that, because what possible career can you go into? Are you going to be a French actress? Was what I'd hear all the time. So it was really nice to hear that from you guys. But that being said, I was wondering, what sort of careers have you thought of? Have you discovered what you'd like to do whilst you've been studying liberal arts?
I am currently working as a research fellow with the Center for Human Rights Studies in Delhi NCR. I work on evaluating sexual harassment laws and their guidelines and international best practices to see why it is that when it comes to survivor-friendly or victim-friendly processes, does India fail its education institutions. I wanted to do work. One thing, I was very clear with what work I wanted to do. I wanted to do it on the field. I didn't want it to be purely academic or research oriented because I'd spent 3 years immersed in academia that I wanted also to get out there and see things. So I, for one, apart from this, have also started working with the Delhi government on access and sustainability, on making the sensory disabilities, on making spaces more friendly to sensory disabilities, on also working with environmental and sustainability. For example, if there is a natural disaster, how can the biodiversity of a city be mapped and replaced with the right amount in order for it to be conducive to the pollution and the general situation of the area. So that's the current work that I'm doing. What I will be looking forward to in the future doing is working with the United Nations at conflict zones. I will be looking to work with governments, NGOs in conflict zones to one, understand the difference, particularly ethnic violence. Ethnic violence is what I will be working with. And it's to work on conflict resolution and newer techniques of conflict resolution that aren't Eurocentric to an extent, but are actually sensitive to the third world. So that is the kind of work stream that I want to go into. And perhaps from there, it is a possibility that I might enter academia back in someday. Yeah.
So, yes.
So you said that you were a pure science student in 11th and 12th, and then all of a sudden a great shift. So did you not face the parents' pressure? Sometimes it happens mainly in India that after science you go into humanity, are you mad? What are you doing?
I did. I also come from an Orthodox Tamilian family. Let me leave a pause after that. Not Bram, thankfully, Tam, not Bram. No, yeah, dramatic effect. But there was, of course, a lot of this thing, not just family. Somehow, the entire extended family's business it becomes as soon as you pick a college, make a college decision. So the challenge I faced is one, you start from a foundational level. When you do these courses, when you start from sociology or law or economics or international relations or anthropology or science or math, you start from the foundation to an extent where even somebody with any graduate, even if you're a pure sciences graduate, and one, I didn't think I faced difficulty as much as I had an advantage actually, because I mean, people who've done social sciences before, you extend it to your BA. When I've done pure sciences, for example, if it's a math or, I mean, I know I hated it, but still statistics or even a physics perspective to looking at environmental sciences and disaster management, for example, is one of the things I'm working on now. I had a step up, right? I mean, I already had that expertise to bridge those two gaps. So it wasn't a difficulty as much as an advantage, if you ask me.
Okay. Next question.
So just a two-pronged question. One is that a liberal arts program desires for the faculty to be very, very sensitive to subjectivity and objectivity. And there are very few schools in India which are right now looking at liberal arts, but the way it's going, it looks like everybody will start offering it. But I am asking about the offering of it being done by, is it, how do you see it expanding? And this is for all of you. How do you see it expanding? Is it expanding where people are just giving it because there is a large pool of students who are now saying, okay, what is this? And there's a curiosity, so there's an aura of trying to gather students. Or do you see colleges actually focusing on liberal arts with the right kind of faculty who understand their biases, their own influence on the children? Because it, as you rightly pointed out, I mean, reading the Tibetan Book of the Dead or being confused is something which is deeply going to affect you in life, and faculty must be sensitive to that.
So yeah, I can say, so I am the new director of admissions for Jindal, but I have noticed liberal arts schools coming out of the woodworks. And that's great because I think that the people are now recognizing there is a recognition that this is something that is of value. I do urge people though to be cautious because sometimes if you look very closely at the fine print, many of these I feel maybe this is a bit mean to say, but I feel like it's basically just that they took their humanities programs and crossed out the word humanities and wrote liberal arts under it. That it's not, I stress to people when we're doing admissions, and you guys I think have really spoken to this well, liberal arts does not equal humanities. It is not merely a humanities degree gussied up. So that's one thing I would say, is that I think there's a recognition in the market. I hate to use the word market, but there's a recognition in education that this is something of real value, that it's fulfilling a real niche in India, and people are expanding it. But again, you have to look at what they're actually doing. So what exactly are they offering? What kind of curriculum is it? What kind of faculty? What kind of teaching is it? Because it really is a pedagogy just as much as an institution. So.
Yeah, the first part of the question is why this renewed renewed interest if we look at the bygone past. But one of the reasons is that their globalization. Many people have had a lot of interaction with countries abroad. And they also know many of our students, their parents have worked abroad, or you have a relative who's working abroad. And they see that in other parts of the world, there is a value placed on liberal arts. Why? Because you're looking for, and someone mentioned employability, and that is a factor that comes in, that in many places, the employers are looking not for a good engineer, a good economist who can't write and who cannot communicate and who will not be able to work in areas of innovation. That's one of the key words right now is innovation. Secondly, in India, there are a lot of hubs growing. There are hubs that are centers of education that combine a school in Hong Kong, a school in Finland, and one in India. So I think this cross-fertilization is very good, and it goes really beyond what we imagined in education. And I won't go into that too much, but I think it's really worth exploring, and I think this whole idea of international education, sharing resources, is so important. We're going to see more and more of it. The solution that's being made in Indian higher education, I think, is a little short of the expectation. I think many of the IITs have now included 6 courses in the area of liberal arts. So that's something that's come up, but they're being taught, they aren't having the same weight as the science and technology and math courses. That's going to take an educational process. One of the things that I've looked for in India and don't see much of are seminars and workshops. I believe that faculty, in order to learn how to do a real liberal arts education, to incorporate experience, reflective thought, and break away from their own background, will have to have workshops. And also, I think the old methods of teaching in the schools will be moving forward. I see it a lot in the schools that are in the lower grades. Some of them are really interesting, the methods that you see. So I think there's a lot of hope, and we know that you've got a huge youth population here. India is going to have a loud, really, exclamation on what's happening in education in the world.
Actually, to be very honest, in our country, the word liberal art is quite a new term. Okay. So all this while, people knew there were 3 streams: science, commerce, arts. So humanities came after that. So at a later stage, at a particular point of time, when you have humanities subjects, we never called humanities as a subject. We said, what you're doing, I'm doing arts. Arts means you're doing history, either political science or you're doing philosophy, whatever the subjects you're doing, it is considered, everything is considered as arts. Okay. Then the humanities concept came. So then people started talking about humanities, at that particular time, all these subjects went towards humanities. Now again, when the liberal arts came into existence, now, it's at times difficult to explain parents about exactly what liberal art is. So, obviously the change is taking place and it will be taking place, but it's slow process, that's the whole thing.
Thank you.
So I think we've gone slightly over time, but we will. I think some of us will be down for coffee. If you have any more questions, you're welcome to continue the conversation. And so before we conclude, I'd like to ask for a round of applause for our student panelists. As always, the students can say things much, much better than we ever can. So I applaud them and thank you very much for your time and attention. Please take care.